YouTube, we have to go, it's preparing to live stream. After we go live on YouTube, then we still have to record on Zoom. So we can have a copy that's a physical hard copy. All right. Give me a moment to go live on Zoom and then got it. And then that will be all yours. Record. You all set, Heather?
Welcome to Author of the Month for October 1st, 2023. Today we are featuring Vilma and her wonderful work. Motilal will conduct an interview, and so we can find out all about what motivates Vilma in her writing. Proceed, Moti. Unmute, please.
Mute, Moti. Moti.
Yeah, thank you, Heather.
Okay.
So, okay, Vilma, lovely to see you. You know, my old schoolmate from Modsec. So, although well, I was in 2 classes ahead of Vilma. So, okay, Vilma, well, tell us a bit about Vilma Sivasankar.
Oh dear. Like what? Oh,
Okay. Vilma.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the first question is could you tell us a bit about yourself, Vilma Sivasankar? Grisha, can we highlight Vilma better than that? I've only seen part of her.
Hi, Vilma. Do you mind moving a little bit into frame?
Think you're better there?
Okay.
Yes.
I don't know. I keep going sideways, kind of thing. You see now? You seeing?
Yes. Oh boy.
I'm trying
Grisha,
to
give
move
us
it.
some directions. Move the chair.
Yeah, no, the chair moving, but every time I move it, I'm shifting a little bit too. So I'm still a little halfway off. So I don't know what to do about that.
Grisha, can we fix that?
Oh, sorry, I'm muted. Yes, I'm working on it to see if I could get her fixed. Let's see. Let's try it one more time. There you
Okay.
go.
No.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to our regular speaker mode, and
All right,
hopefully we will be able to get the interaction that way. Ideally, when you speak, you should show Motilal, and when Vilma speaks, she should show.
Okay.
Okay. So.
All right. Okay
Yeah.
then. Okay. Are we ready, Grisha?
Yeah, let's try it this way.
Okay, Vilma, my first question to you is that tell us a bit about Vilma Sivasankar.
Okay. Well, I am my age. You want to know my age?
No, tell us about related to writing.
Well, yeah, because I have started writing late in life. Everything happens to me late in life. So I am now 69, and just 4 years ago was my first attempt at writing and publishing. But, you know, I always like to write. I love to write and to read, except that I never thought about writing a book until my daughter prodded me. She said, write a book, because we have a publisher and we can get it printed. And I had no idea what was going on there, you know, but I still did make an attempt. And the result is the book that I have, Breaking Beach and Other Folklore Stories.
Okay, well, you have already answered my second question. So I go to the third. I notice that most of the characters in your stories are young people. Are you writing for the younger generation in particular, or you're writing to remind us of the days gone by?
That's right, both of them. You have hit the nail on the head, on both heads, young people and old people heads. Because I wanted to tell the young people something about my youthful days and what had happened in those days, and to see if they will be like envious that they can't have that kind of childhood. Also, I want the older people to see the kind of things that I went through as a child and other people as well. And now we are about this age. Some of us have died and some are still around to benefit from what I have said.
Okay, you just said the stories are set in the past. What is the message to the reader of today?
Well, it depends. It depends, because I have two folklore stories that didn't come as a live experience. It's something that was given. These two were given to me by my mother and by a guy who, well, if you read the introductory part of the book, it's a man who used to come to visit us every day. Every Friday, we would have a participation of games and storytelling and gossiping and things like that. And he gave us a couple of his stories. So one, I think one or two have been his own. Right, the mud baby was my mother's own, and the John and Johnny was the guy who we used to refer to as uncle.
Okay, I notice a heavy flavor of folklore in your stories. Why you choose that particular genre?
Folklore. Well, I don't know. You see what happened, as I said, the book was kind of the other writing a book was thrown a basin of water, and I had to do something quickly, and I didn't know what to do. So those are the things that came into my head, and I decided to use those themes to write my stories. It's not like if I like zombie and things. I don't like zombies, but those.
Yes, I was going to ask you that. So were these stories based on experience, or maybe what you heard from others, just say your mother? Because I was thinking about in particular the Sukuya story.
Yes, that was one. We can't accuse, yeah, but that was just a general kind of talk in the village that this lady was a Sukuya, and the ending up was not the real ending up, okay? But I just made up parts of it to make a story. But the lady was actually living in our village. Said to be, rumored to be. Right? That was the Sukuya story. And the one with the Breaking Beach, well, of course, I was part of that group, so I knew firsthand what happened.
Okay, what kind of research you do before you write your stories?
The only research was my brain, because that's the only place those stories were settled in. It was not written anywhere, like in any book that I could refer to. I just try to use my knowledge of English language, and but the stories were memorable stories that were given to me. I said one by my uncle and one by my mother, and I'm not sure about any other one, but if there was any more with that kind of thing where I got it from a third person, from a second person. Sorry.
Okay, so the stories come from your head then.
Sukuya, what's the other one? What's the other one? Well, the ones we are reading today, some of them are not in the book. I made up those recently. Right? I made up those recently. The ones that are in the book were different. Basically, the two from the book was the Breaking Beach and the Sukuya. The others, they were made up from my, but they were all memorable things.
So is there any particular local writer who has influenced your writing? Maybe Al Ramsawak, Angelo Bisesa Singh, or even our own Alicia Janki?
Well, actually, I'm only now hearing about Miss Janki Arati. I'm now hearing about
This
this,
another
although
one.
I think she's a writer in a newspaper, I think. Some newspaper, she is.
She writes regularly. She is a regular on our poetry and prose. She's not here today.
Right, I
What
know, but
about
one
Al
thing,
from Sawak? Because
well,
I know that
was
Al taught you at school.
Al was my art teacher in school. I dropped science to go and do art. They put me in the science class in Form 2 and I dropped all the science to go and do art instead of Sawak. Of course, I got a distinction, but what do I do with art now, huh? Write
Oh, yes,
books?
but you could illustrate your books.
Ah, true. I thought of that, but when I hold a pencil, I feel like I can't do anything.
What is your favorite? What is your favorite story from your writings?
Favorite story? Oh, dear me. I guess Breaking Beach because I was part of it.
So I suppose that could lead to the next question. Which
Mhm.
character in your book do you relate to and why?
Well, Sally. Sally, that was actually me.
In Breaking Beach?
Yes,
Mhm.
that was me. I was just part of the group, but I was small. I had the older ones and myself, but Sally was me. Yeah.
Okay, so which story did you find the easiest to write, and which you find the most difficult for you to write?
Well, honestly, they all took the same amount of time and effort, so I can't say which one was easiest and which one was hardest because they were all imaginative. They didn't have no research and so on to do. But I didn't call the names that the names of the people in Breaking Beach. I did not call the right names because I don't want anybody to read it and say I say thing about them, you know. So I made up names and so on.
Okay, and this leads to the other question.
Mhm.
Are there any secrets or events in your story that people may recognize?
The only secret that they could have recognized, but when I am telling the people about it, I'm saying, you recognize yourself there? No, I can't remember that. I can't remember Bricken Beach. I said, really? And you were there? So even the secret they can't remember, and I knew what it was. But it wasn't nothing big. It was just staying away from school for a day. And a lady accommodated us, and we were quite happy. And our parents never knew. They didn't get to know about it at all.
Okay, and is there another collection of stories, another book in the making, and you want to tell us, give us a little preview of what to expect?
Yeah, I want to do some other stories. One of the most important one will be based on my mother and father, based on what my mother used to be telling us in the good old days when we were small. And when, of course, she's telling us about the little, anecdotes about what used to happen. We want to listen. We're busy. We had to go and play. We're going to have to do something. We're not listening to her. But a lot of the words and a lot of the stories are still stuck in my head. So I want to do a story based on my mother and father, right? Along with some other stories that of that era. I can't remember them offhand now, I'm sorry. But I know the one with my father and mother will be one of the most important ones. And of course,
Okay, well,
Mhm. Yeah,
go ahead,
want
Wilma.
to do one also. Yeah, okay, thanks. Thank you.
Go, no, go ahead, Wilma. You were saying something there?
No, one of the other story is about a school, a almost school fight. That is one of the other stories where I was with my cousin and we used to be walking home from school and so on. And this girl, my cousin used to be picking on this girl all the time. So the story would be about that little incident back and forth. Those are the two I'm remembering now offhand.
Okay, so thank you very much, Wilma. And now we will proceed to the readings, and one of the first thing we do is we read from Breaking Beach, which is say that actually about you. So okay, so we hand over to Heather, and Heather, you could just introduce the readers. Thank you.
Well, the next reader will be Krishna Samaru, who will proceed to read from Breaking Beach. Welcome, Krishna.
Thank you, Heather. Congratulations, Wilma, on being selected as Author of the Month for October 2023. Yes, so from your interview and from this piece called Breaking Beach, you get a lot of the good old days. Now, some people might say the good old days, but you know, you had a lot of things about it like licks and walking to school barefooted and bathing. You have half bath and full bath. I used to have that full bath by the standpipe, and they used to use blue soap and scrub you, get out all the muck for the week. Condensed milk in a tin. That was a cup. And roti ad nauseam, roti and all. Vendors by the school, you buying from them, chili bibi in your story, sugar cake, tamban ball. I love sugar cake. And then the parlor, everybody had a parlor. Drops the belly full that you talk about. We had that. And the owner of the parlor, keeping an eye on the children, knowing everybody. And the penny, of course, what it said, the 2 cents in one coin, that's the penny. So a lot of us can relate to those good old days. So here we go. So the title of your work is Breaking Beach and other folklore stories. Yeah, I had no idea of the title of the book itself. So this is the title piece, Breaking Beach. It was a Thursday morning in the middle of May. The year was around 1961, I suppose you mean 1961, in the southwestern island of La Trinity. 7-year-old Sally, well, he just confessed who Sally was based on, yawned tiredly as she prepared to go into the family's outdoor bathroom to clean her skin, as her mother called the daily half bath that was taken by people in those days of very limited water supplies. The full bath was taken on a weekend when her mother would apply soap and rub off the muck, you know, that collected on her skin during the week. The water was taken from a metal barrel in the yard where it collected rainwater or fetched in a bucket from the nearest public water standpipe that the government had installed a quarter-mile distant apart along villages' main roads. That weekend muck rubbing ritual used to be painful, and some good slaps would follow any attempts to protest. This morning, Sally had just come back from some grassy bushes at the back of her house, where she and 2 of her friends went to carry out their morning chore of tying out some goats that their parents minded. There was not much time left for her to get ready for school, but she felt like a robot this morning and dawdled as she put on her uniform, a maroon overall with a square neck and no sleeves over a white shirt with short sleeves. The school, a Roman Catholic denominational, was just short of a mile from Lagoon Trace, where Sally lived, in a village south of San Fernando. As she ate her breakfast of roti with steam-fried vegetables known as tal curry and drank her cocoa tea from a condensed milk can, she wished she didn't have to go to school today. Her 2 older brothers, Bobby, 11, and Kenny, 9, had already left for school after sweeping the yard, washing and dressing themselves, and eating their breakfast. When she was ready, she waited for her Trace friends, Chandra and Gumati. Gumati was 7 years old, like Sally, but Chandra was 10 years old. It was already 8 a.m. and the girls would have to run if they were to reach before school called at 8:30 a.m. As the three girls came out of the trace and onto the main road, they saw two more of their friends, Leela and Tina, also now leaving their houses. The five girls set off to school, each feeling the fear of reaching late and getting licks. In those days, in the months of May and October, all RC schools observed what was known as the Holy Rosary months. Every morning, after saying the already lengthy prayers and singing many hymns, the children had to repeat the Hail Mary Rosary 50 times while still standing. It was hard on the girls who had to walk so far to school after doing chores at home. All they wanted was to sit somewhere to catch their breath when they arrived. Having no school shoes, Sally walked to and from school barefoot every day. The hot road asphalt burning her feet and the blazing sun burning her skin red and then dark. Her parents were very poor and could not afford to buy school footwear for her. 7 years old as she was, still barely a baby, she had to make the trek sometimes 4 times a day because she never carried a packed lunch to school. All the students were served by the school with a plastic glass full of milk during the morning recess, and that filled the hunger spot in their bellies until lunch. But Sally still had to run the almost a mile to her home at the lunch break for something to eat, where most times there was nothing to go with the stale, dry morning leftover roti. Sally usually received a penny coin from her mother every morning to spend in school. A penny was 2 cents in 1 coin. In those days, La Trinity was one of the West Indian islands ruled by the British, and they all used those coins. But after La Trinity became independent, they stopped making pennies. With a penny at recess time, Sally could buy a cent's worth each of mango pepper pickles, known locally as anchar, at any of the vendors near the school, and a pack of deep-fried chickpeas, chana grains, or chili bibi, or anything that a cent could buy. Water from the school's tap pipes would be the drink to follow. Chili bibi was made from dry corn grains that were parched in a heavy iron pot and later grounded into a powder and sweetened with sugar. Chandra and Tina, whose parents were more well-to-do, used to sometimes get up to 10 cents to spend. With that, they could buy sweets, a bottle of orange juice, a bellyful cake, and other snacks. As the girls were unenthusiastically walking to school that morning, kicking stones and dry leaves, Leela suddenly said, "We're bound to go to school today. I don't feel like going now." 9-year-old Tina said, "Me neither, na. I know you're reaching late today and will not miss saying the rosary. And will miss saying the rosary. We all sure to get licks for that. And my mommy would not let me stay home. She go beat me for that too." All the girls knew the same would apply to all of them. Their heads dropped despondently. They became quiet as they wondered how they could take a day off from school and not get caught. It was a form of truancy, locally known as breaking beach. Boy students did that all the time in those days, secretly running off alone or with friends to catch birds in the bushes or heading down by the nearby seaside to have fun and coming back at the time when school would be dismissed. By this time, the girls had walked almost 3/4 of the distance to their school. They reached by their favorite parlor that they loved to dip in to buy snacks, sometimes when any of them had money. A parlor in small islands like La Trinity was a snack shop and a mini mart in one. This parlor was very small and was run by a very pleasant lady known as Miss Daisy, who also lived in the same building but at the back. She knew everybody who came into her parlor, especially the school children. They decided to go in and buy some sweets. They chorused, "Morning, Miss Daisy," as they entered. And Randy would give you the continuation of this story. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Krishna, for that riveting reading. Randy is next with Breaking Beach Part 2, the continuation. Thank you. Are you there, Randy? Unmute.
Right, I'm unmuted.
Okay, good.
The host has to start the video. Okay, start my video. Okay. All right. Good morning, children. How are you today? We are good, said 2 or 3 of them without any energy. What would you like to buy this morning? She asked. A penny paradise plum, please, said Chandra, who had 5 cents to spend that day. She would get 6 sweets for her penny, and after sharing 1 each for everybody, she would get an extra 1 for herself. She would have 3 cents still in her pocket for later. A paradise plum was a hard orange sweet that had yellow and red stripes. It took a long time to finish sucking one, and children enjoyed that. Miss Daisy gave Chandra the sweets and watched her share them around. You know you're going to be late for school today if you don't hurry up, right? She asked them. Yes, Miss Daisy, they all chorused listlessly. They continued to dawdle. As Sally was putting her sweet in her mouth, she almost swallowed it when she heard Leela suddenly say to Miss Daisy, "Let we stay here today now, Miss Daisy. We will go get licks if we go to school late, and if we go back home, we will get more licks." She looked up and smiled hopefully along with the other girls at Miss Daisy, as if a miracle was about to take place, but only with her approval. Miss Daisy looked at the children, and at the point of refusing their request, she felt very sorry for them. She smiled. Okay, you could stay here today, but I would not let this happen again, okay? First and last time. Sally felt for the first time real fear mixed with excitement as Miss Daisy pulled in the parlor doors and locked them. Her day's sales were over, and the girls let out a deep, relieved breath together. She left them in the small customer area and went off to do her domestic chores. The girls played there all day. Around lunchtime, Miss Daisy came into the parlor and gave them some sandwiches and juice. They felt like guests. They also spent out their daily money on snacks, sang songs, related anecdotes, made jokes, and laughed with each other. As Miss Daisy went back into her house that morning, she was shaking her head gently from left to right and thinking about how sad it was that children are generally never respected as humans. Adults seem to forget that they are small and needed to be nurtured so they can become kind and helpful, in addition to being educated when they grow up, she thought. Instead, they are threatened, abused, and forced to obey the elders in their lives because they cannot retaliate. Then the adults are shocked and surprised when the grown child becomes wayward or worse. Most of all, adults seem to forget what they themselves felt when they were getting the same abuse as children, she mused. She pondered about how, because the school system dictated a 5-day attendance, parents forced their children to go because they would now get free time to do chores and gossip among themselves. Children should not be forced into something they didn't create, she thought. Yes, school and children's socialization were important, but there are times when children just want to feel happy and feel as they were born to be. Miss Daisy belonged to a Presbyterian family and had a huge church next door to the parlor, where they had Sunday sermons and other social activities during the year. For reasons based on poverty and contrary to religious beliefs, Sally's family never attended these activities. Around 3 p.m., it was time for the children children to go home, as school was also going to be over at that hour. Miss Daisy came into the parlor and reminded them. They thanked her with grateful smiles, and she let them out. Other children were already walking past the parlor, and the girls blended into the stream. However, even now, the relaxed beach breakers were not in any mood to go home just yet. All of them promised each other not to breathe a word of what happened today to anyone. They would all get a beating if they did. On the way back to Lagoon Trace, there was a large piece of open land that was owned by the landlords of the village. There was no fence around it, and the land was easily accessible from the main road. On this piece of land were huge trees known as downs trees. The fruits called downs were small and round, about an inch in diameter. When fully grown, they became yellow and ripened and had a big, hard as stone seeds. Children loved to pick them green or ripe and eat happily, but they were warned about the lethal dangers of swallowing the seed. In a small throat, a down seed could choke a child, and without instant first aid, the child could die. There were also what everyone called chenet trees and kaimet trees. Chenets were also dangerous, but children loved to pick and eat those fruits when ripe, which kept them from starvation in those days of poverty. This happy Thursday in me may never, ever come again, Sally thought to herself as she ran along with the others, noisily heading towards the trees to join their children. They spent a half hour pelting the fruits, pulling branches, picking, biting, tasting, spitting out the sour ones, screaming and laughing. Then they headed down the few final laps that would take them to Lagoon Trace. The girls went to their respective homes and quietly changed out of their uniforms and into home clothes. Sally looked around her house and yard and realized that her brothers were thankfully not at home. Most likely, they would be in the guava bushes at the back of the trace playing and or catching birds. Then they would bring in the goats and tie them up in the backyard shed. She went outside to play some more as she waited for her mother to call her for dinner and to clean her skin before going to bed. There was no school homework in those days during the week. Many years later, even when Sally was grown and had a family of her own, the memory of that day still lingered in her brain. She knew that even though Miss Daisy took a great risk in keeping the beach breakers in her parlor, she herself would never be brave enough to do that for any child. But she knew that she would have sympathy for a child that felt like taking a day off from stressful school. She had been through it after all. The end. Okay. I like it. I like the whole circle, and knowing that's not made up. It's basically biographical. So it's an experience, and you also say what you learn from it. So
Well, thank you very much, Randy, for that.
Mm.
The next person to read is Cassie, but I think that he had to leave at 1:30. Gershia, have you see any sign of Cassie there?
Okay, Cassie is
Cassie
not
left.
here.
Okay, so we'll
So,
go on to Cynthia. Is it Cynthia?
I have Cassie's piece, so I could read it.
Okay, well, sure. Go ahead, Motilal. Thank you.
Okay, so before I read it, I just want to say that I remember those days when we used to have to, for want of a better word, supplement our food with the fruits, the dungs tree and the guavas and all that. So it's nice that Wilma wrote about this to remind us of the time gone by. And it was an enjoyable time, picking dongs, guava, mango, and all that. Okay, so now just shifting gears a bit. This one is a poem that Wilma wrote. This is a poem that Wilma wrote, not seeing me being highlighted. I don't know if Gosha could fix that. But it is On the Death of a Child by Vilma Susanka. Why come we into this world? Surely no one knows. A million people, a million explanations whole, but no one really knows. Some sages seek to pacify. Karma is what they say when relations die. And we cry, everybody has to go one day. I am sure God knows how much we bear. I am sure He knows we suffer. Bringing up children takes so much care, giving them all we have to offer. Now, what fault was it of His, just so His time come? Just so His name struck off the list? This cannot be fair to some. At funerals, people come, speak, and go. They say He's with God on another stage. But what do they really know? My heart is about to burst with rage. Who and where is that God we hold so dear? Is this proof of His power? Why did He give me this to bear and make my life turn sour? Okay, that was a poem by Vilma Susanka on the death of a child. And Cassie especially wanted to read this because he recently lost his son. But he had a urgent meeting to go to, an urgent business to attend to, so that he left us at 1:30. So that's why I read it. Okay, thank you, Heather.
Thank you, Motilal. Next, we will have Cynthia reading Miss Vero the Sukuya. All set, Cynthia, for you. Thanks.
Thank you very much. I very much enjoyed this story by Vilma, so I'm happy to be reading it. Miss Vero di Sukuya. In the 1950s to 1960s, Sita lived in a medium-sized village known as La Plaisance, situated in South Trinidad. Her family lived in sugarcane trace. This small trace was actually more like a lane because it ended down a hill after about 20 lots on either side, with no joining to any other street or road. It was a tiny community where the residents mainly worked in the sugarcane fields. Most families were small and consisted of one child or one or two children, but Sita was one of 6 siblings. Sita's mother worked as a cane cutter, but her father did odd jobs because he did not like the attitudes of the cane fields bosses. So they were very poor. The family's house was small and made of mud and mangrove wood, but it was like the Traces Community Center, as there was a lot of yard space. Every Friday evening, all the villagers would gather in their yard to have genial discussions about whatever was trending in the village or the trace. Their children played all around together, and some of the adults would tell them stories when the playing was over. Sometimes during the year, there would be quarrels or cuss-outs between the neighbors, but they would get back together after some time, especially at public celebrations like Diwali, the Hindu festival of lights, Christmas, and even weddings where everyone was invited. Electricity had just started becoming widespread, and some of the families had it in their houses, but there were no streetlights as yet. At nights, the trace was dark and hardly anyone ventured outside for any reason. The exceptions were Saturdays and Wednesdays, when the whole trace would go to the newly built Venus Cinema to see a new movie. They referred to that as going 8:30. One morning, sorry, I went to page 3. Let me find page 3. Sorry about that. I have it in 3 separate pages. Oops. In one of the houses about halfway down the trace lived Mr. B. No one knew his real name and nobody cared to find out. They just called him B. He lived alone and managed to make his living by gardening. Then one day, B died. After his funeral, his sister, Miss Vero, came to live in his house. She was also living alone since she and her husband had been separated. She was renting an old house somewhere else, and she used to make local sweets such as pone, sweetbread, buns, coconut bakes, and drops, which she sold to the villagers. Now, the talk of the village was that Miss Vero was a Sukiya, but nobody could give a valid reason that would make that assumption real. So talk went on, especially on Friday evenings in Sita's family yard. According to local folklore, Sukiya were assumed to be witches who could shed their skins at night and fly off to seek their victims in the form of a ball of fire. It was also said that they would sink their fangs into their victim's inner arm or thigh, where the blood might be more tasty or accessible, and suck blood from there. The only so-called proof of an existing Sukiya in any village was the blue marks that the ladies would notice sometimes when they went to the bathroom after they woke up in the morning. That blue mark would appear 2 days after the actual suck. But they also felt faint, as when one would have lost some blood. The victim would show her relatives and say, "Look, a Sukiya sucked me," and nobody could do anything. Solutions were suggested by some. One was that if they knew which night they were sucked, and the next morning they would rub salt on the spot, then all of that Sukiya's teeth would fall out. But by the time the marks actually appeared, it would make no sense rubbing the salt. During the day, the Sukiya's teeth would look normal, but at night they would change into fangs like a vampire's after she uttered her devilish prayers. Then, according to folklore theories, the Sukiya would change into the ball of fire and fly out to seek a victim after rolling up her skin into a ball and putting it under a mortar where it would be safe. One other solution was that if someone rubbed salt on the peeled skin, then the Sukiya would not be able to put it on and she would die. One morning, Sita woke up feeling faint, and she saw that her nightdress was pulled up on her thighs. She looked at her legs to pull the dress down and saw a blue mark on her thigh. "Mama," she called her mother, "look at my leg, it's blue here." Her mother looked and saw the discolored leg. "It looking like a Sukiya bite you," she said. When next the ladies met for their Friday evening conversation, Sita's mother told them about it. "We have to do something before all of we die from losing the blood," she lamented. They decided to tell the men to make a plan to see if Miss Vero was really a witch. One night around the new moon, when the night was darkest, a group of the men waited by some neighbor's house for the midnight hour. Suddenly, their eyes nearly fell out of their heads as they saw this brilliant ball of fire fly up into the air from Vero's yard. They had kept some salt in a bag. They went into the unfenced yard and looked around. One of the men saw a mortar turned upside down. The men lifted it and saw under it what seemed like fresh skin. They rubbed the salt all over the skin and then went to their homes. Next morning, a loud scream was heard coming from down the trace where Vero lived. She was running and screaming loudly as if in tremendous pain. The ladies looked at her and saw her skin looking red and raw. They tried to help her to the emergency department at the nearby hospital, but alas, she didn't make it. she died. After that, nobody seemed to complain of blue blemishes on their skins or feeling weak and faint. And eventually, streetlights were installed in most of the streets and traces, including the sugarcane trace. So the place became bright even at night. That's the end. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cynthia. That was a very nice story and well read.
Thank you.
Now we will proceed to Shahira reading The Suspected Pervert. Shahira,
Yeah.
welcome.
Hey, Bootsy, you have something to say?
Okay. Yes, I just wanted to say that, we're moving along quite nicely. So it's like we have a bit of time. So is anybody want to make any comments about that Sukuya story, or probably tell us about their own experience with Sukuya?
I can make a comment. When I was little, like a baby,
Shahira,
used-
just stand by a bit, let me hear his comment.
so that story brought up some memories for me when I was younger as a child. They used to find like little bruises on my skin, and it was after when I got older, my siblings confessed when they passed by, they used to pinch me because I was a quiet baby. I really didn't cry much. But that was a big thing when I was small because I was very fair. So any little thing would show up, mosquito bite, any little thing would show up on my skin. And it's not until I was older they confessed to my mother that story.
Well, Gersha, you had real life Sukuya?
They said they would do it just to get me to cry.
Yes, and everybody would blame the poor old lady living around the corner.
Exactly.
Yes, because I remember at, when I was small, and there was this old lady who would be walking, and people would shout "Sukuya," and she would turn around and let out some expletives. And I think that I don't know. I don't think she was a Sukuya, but it's how you treat people, and especially children could be very, very cruel. So I just wanted to say that. Wilma, you want to tell me anything about that particular Sukuya?
Um, no, and most of the information that you get there is what I would have remembered. I can't remember how she died, but it wasn't that way. Yeah, it wasn't. I made up that last part. You hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I made it up. I made up that part of it. But the village did suspect this lady. And the thing is, they used to tell you, if anybody pass and tell you, or if they come for a cup of salt in the morning to borrow some salt, know that they're a Sikunya. And if they're telling you the next day, they see you on the road and telling you, you're looking real nice, you just be careful because they could be coming for you that night. So that is my view on the matter.
Well, we'll go on now to Sahira's reading. Welcome, Sahira.
Hey. Yes, so I will be reading The Suspected Pervert. Let's begin. Julia was 8 years old. She was the youngest of 5 siblings. Their father had died when Julia was 6 years old, and 4 of them lived with their mother in a small rural village called Granado in East Trinidad. She had 2 older brothers, Joseph, aged 16, and Toddy, aged 13. Joseph was already employed in a nearby cocoa processing factory, and Toddy was attending a secondary school. Her eldest sister, Gracie, was married and lived far away in a village east of the island. Umilta was 11 years old and was attending primary school with Julia. The cottage in which Julia and her family lived was perched atop a small hill all by itself. Their nearest neighbors lived some distance down the hill. To get to any other place, Julia and her family had to walk down the hill to the main road, then take a taxi or a bus, or walk to their respective destinations. Julia's mother was employed as a servant, and she had to leave home early to get to work. Down the hill to the main. Joseph also had to leave early. That left the 3 young vulnerable children to dress themselves, eat breakfast, and make their respective ways to their schools. Toddy traveled to his school by bus, and Umilta and Julia walked a short distance to theirs. Sometimes the 2 girls walked to school together, but most times they did not. One morning, Julia, walking by herself, reached the base of the hill. A man was riding his bicycle along the main road, and he reached where Julia was just about to turn in the direction of her school. She recognized the man as Mr. Boise, who had recently come to this village to live. "Good morning, Mr. Boise." Julia addressed him politely as he stopped in front of her. "Morning, darling," Mr. Boise replied to her. "You going school?" "Yes, Mr. Boise," said Julia shyly as she bent her head and continued walking. "How's school going? What class you in?" he asked her. "School good," answered Julia. "I in 2nd standard." "You have money to spend today, darling?" Mr. Boise asked her. "Yes, Mr. Boise, I have a penny," said Julia. She automatically put her hand on the spot where the pocket in her blouse was. Mr. Boise then put his hand into his shirt pocket and took out a penny coin. "Here, darling, take this. You can buy more snack at school today," he said. Julia shyly took the penny and hurried off to school. Mr. Boise stood watching her for a few minutes with a thoughtful look on his face before riding off. Thereafter, every morning when Julia reached the bottom of the hill, Mr. Boise would be coincidentally cycling towards her at that same time. The usual good morning greetings were exchanged, and Julia accepted the penny which he gave her. Sometimes she used the coin to buy an extra snack, but most times she took it home and hid it somewhere secret. One day, Umilta was leaving home to go to school. A few minutes after Julia had left, her eyes opened wide with surprise as she saw Julia speaking to a man on a bicycle at the main road. She came closer and hid behind some bushes while watching this encounter. She recognized the man as Mr. Boise, whom the villagers said was renting a small, isolated shack and had just come there to live. Umilta also heard from her school friends that he targeted young girls, whom he carried to his shack from time to time. These girls had stopped coming to school and no one knew what had become of them. She decided to be more alert with Julia from now on. In the evening after school that day, Umilta took Julia aside and asked her, "What were you and Mr. Boise talking about this morning?" Julia, the innocent child, told her elder sister about the penny that Mr. Boise gave her every morning. Umilta decided that she had to do something before Julia became a victim of that perverse fellow. The very next morning, when Mr. Boise stopped to speak to Julia, Umilta emerged from behind the bushes where she was hiding. "Good morning, Mr. Boise," she said. "Ah, good morning. Darling," stammered Mr. Boise in apparent surprise. "Julia," she said, "you go on off to school now, or you will be late." She then turned to Mr. Boise as Julia ran off and said sternly to him, "Why are you targeting my innocent young sister, you horrible old man?" Her two hands were resting firmly on her hips, one hand holding her books. "Who? Me?" said Mr. Boise, as if he had no idea what she was accusing him of. "Yes, you. I have heard quite a few things about you, which I hope are not true, and if anything bad ever happens to my sister or me, the police will come for you. Do you understand that?" Umilta then turned away and followed her sister until both of them were safe in the schoolyard. In the evening, when their mother came home from work, Umilta told her all about the incident. They both decided to be very careful in future, and especially with Julia. The two girls now went together to school every day. As for Mr. Boise, if indeed that was his real name, no one saw him in that neighborhood anymore. It was rumored that he went off to another village to rent. And that's it for me on today's episode of Poetry and Prose. Hope you enjoyed.
Thank you so much, Jahira. Very cautionary tale.
Yes, as usual, Shahira does such excellent reading. And one of the comments in the chat here by Althea was a cautionary tale that these perverts, some live and some live on the internet. And that's always the case. And this is indeed a cautionary tale. And I think that this is a good message here that Vilma is giving us. So I'm sure that we have people would like to comment on this story in particular, because growing up, whenever you tell your parents or you tell somebody something about somebody who is older than you, they have a tendency not to believe you. And we have a lot of these things happening these days. As a matter of fact, in a newspaper just yesterday, or is it the day before, that a 13-year-old girl who reported rape a few days earlier was shot and killed. I don't know if anybody paying attention to that, but
Yes, I saw that.
Althea say this is a cautionary tale. So I would like to invite comments about this story before we move along.
Well, okay. I was thinking basically what they call Boise was doing is a really grooming the child
Grooming, yeah.
as a that's what they call it, and so that as she gets older she becomes more amenable to his predatory nature, you know. Um, so it is uh, within the context of the theme of Breaking Beach too, if you understand what I'm saying, right? Right. And it, you know, Trinidad has that problem, you know, uh, for sure.
All over, you know, not just Trinidad, but
Yeah,
all over,
yeah,
yes.
yeah. I guess, yeah, yeah.
I think Altia want to add something.
Uh, yeah, well, I mean, grooming has now moved to the internet, you know, and a lot of men trap young girls on the internet with small talk and getting them to undress and show themselves, and then they begin blackmailing them. And you have a lot of young women have committed suicide because of the shame and the whole idea that their parents would find out what happened to them, and for them the alternative is to commit suicide. So it's a very serious subject.
I guess what Vilma's story is letting us know that this kind of thing happened even back then in our youth as well. So it's an ongoing issue.
I'm curious about the story about the other girls. Before that, they just disappeared and stopped coming to school. So nobody was curious about what happened to them, or so I guess they were not noticed. They just disappeared like that. Or maybe that's another short story.
Hello.
Yes, Vilma, we were just wondering if you have another short story
Yeah. Well,
up
as you
your sleeve about that.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, as
the
she they
girls who
yeah.
fell off the radar.
Mm-hmm.
The girls who fell off the radar after meeting this man who was giving pennies. So I'm just curious about what happened to them. They got pregnant and were sent away by their parents, because that's what they did in the old days.
Yes, all
Girls were
kinds of things.
sent away. Nobody know what happened, but they just disappeared.
Yes, and there were stories in the past when I was small too, that this girl hanged herself. Nobody know why she hanged herself. These are the things that used to happen in my life, in my community. You don't know why she would have done that, right? And yeah, these men were really, really perverse. And as Mr. Motilal said, you go to tell your parents that somebody is approaching you in this
Yeah,
manner, they would beat you. They would not believe you. They would beat you. So you're between a rock and a hard place.
yeah.
So,
You know, and go ahead.
Umi, oh yeah, but my advantage was that these same people who I grew up with, these same young people who I grew up with, there's a bunch of females that I grew up with, they had gone through the process. They heard the elders talking, and then we used to sit in the community when the trace women started to sit down and talk. We used to be sitting there, and some of them used to tell my mother, "Well, what are them sitting there for? You should not let them sit and listen to." My mother said, "No, they have to learn. They have to learn," and she was not sending us away. So we got a chance to hear about stories and learn and benefit from these stories.
Yeah.
You know, that reminds me and what Altia was saying too. Um, can you hear me, please?
What do you mean about the girls disappearing from the
Yes,
towns or the
Altia.
villages? They were sent
Yes,
off
Alte, you know,
to the States or another island. They just disappeared.
yes, certainly, certainly. I remember in high school, you know, we were in Form 3, and two girls stopped coming to school. One girl was Tara, and I did write a poem about Tara. And there was another girl whose name was Dolly. And Tara got pregnant because Tara's sister was having a baby, and the parents sent her to her sister's place to help the sister out. And she was raped. Long time they say that the man holds she down. Her brother-in-law raped her and she became pregnant, and was a whole lot of bacchanal, and the parents blamed Tara and all that, and Tara committed suicide.
Oh dear.
There was this other girl who was in my class, her name was Dolly. And I using pseudonyms, and Dolly became pregnant with the driver, the PH driver, who used to bring her to school every day. And both Tara and Dolly stopped going to school. And as Althea pointed out, Dolly parents somehow or the other, I think they sent her to the States. And that was the last we heard about her. So again, Vilma, I think this is a very good story. And as Althea pointed out, it's a cautionary tale. Of course, now we as parents, this generation of parents, and if I should say grandparents like me, we take these things very, very seriously. So if your children or your grandchildren talk to you about something, take action. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we will the next reading will be by Vishnu, the Laughing Lagahoo. Vishnu, you there? Vishnu?
One moment,
Yes,
I'm asking him to start video.
Okay.
you hear me now? Are you?
Yes, we are.
Yes, we are. Yes.
So I'm going to read you a story called The Laughing Lagahoo. Cindy lived with a large family in a tiny cottage in the dirt and gravel-filled road that was known as Merle Trace, situated about 3/4 of a mile east of Mosquito Creek in the village of La Romaine, South Trinidad. The cottage, mainly made of mud, needed surface repasting very often. The walls, as well as the floorings, were mud-filled, so there was always the need to get a new supply of the special white-colored dirt that was required and keep it stored for use. That white dirt could only be sourced across the bypass at the creek. With that dirt mixed with cattle dung and water, a thick paste was made with which the house owner smeared the floors and walls. The Trace residents generally came home from their sugar cane field jobs at about 10 a.m., having worked until 5 a.m. So on any random Friday afternoon, they might gather themselves in a group and walk to the dirt hole, which was about a 1/4 mile away north near the Gulf of Paria. Cindy, her mother, her 2 older teenage sisters, and an older teenage brother always went with the group, which comprised all ages. Everybody's house had at least one mud floor on the ground level, even if the house was built of boards or bricks, and therefore they all needed the white dirt to lippe from time to time. On the route to the dirt hole, they had to pass through a nameless track with a series of bushes on one side and a coconut field plantation on the other side. Merle Trace was like a borderline between 2 landowners, the Chandrews and the Sinats. The coconut field was owned by a Sinat brother, and Merle Trace was owned by the Chandros. So the nameless trace was like a free pass for everybody. The coconut field had a watchman named Vernon. He was of African descent, originally from the West Indian island of Carriacou. He lived on Merle Trace and was very friendly to everyone. He had other relatives living in Merle Trace as well as along the main road, and everyone got along peacefully. Vernon was living a bachelor's life after separating from his wife, and he had the children with her. He lived just obliquely opposite to Cindy's family in a very small cottage, but he shared the cottage with a lady named Popo and her 2 daughters. There was a wall separating the 2 tiny apartments. Cindy was often told by her mother that it was Vernon who gave her her name. The story went that Cindy was born at home and delivered with the help of the village midwife. Everybody in Merle Trace knew of Cindy's home-delivered birth. So on the day, a few days later, when Cindy's father was heading out to the local registrar's office to inform her who would be sitting at his tiny window, looking out and smiling in his usual quietly sedate manner, but Vernon. "Where you going, Nat?" he asked Cindy's father. "I going by the lady to register the child," he said. "Well, name she Cindy, eh?" he said to Nat. So said, so done, as the saying goes. Nat gave the registrar the English name that Vernon gave him. It was put on the certificate that was to be later taken to the Red House to make legal and permanent. Most of Cindy's siblings' names were given by Vernon to Nat, who meekly followed his suggestions, despite the fact that Nat was a devoted Hindu Indian and the names were of other languages origin. But even all that being so, there were also general rumors and suspicion among the villagers that Vernon was a lagahoo. A lagahoo was a kind of male, devilish, midnight roaming, half-human, half-wolf creature who was reputed to be dragging a chain along the road, which made a lot of noise. Because of that fearful rumor, those people who might have been inclined to go outdoors at night in those times of no electricity would think twice before venturing. During the day also, it was said, the lagahoo could be in one spot and reach another spot in seconds. But even though rumors abounded among village gossipers, there was no real reason to prove that Vernon was a lagahoo. Sometimes on their way to the dirt, the group would sight a bunch of delectably full coconuts and take a chance to pick some from not so high a tree. They had their digging equipment, including hoes and cutlasses. First, they would look around to see if Vernon was around. Friendly though he was, he had a job to do, and he could be anywhere about in a field. If they didn't see him, then one of the young male members of the group would climb the tree, cutting off the bunch, and the other man would chop the nut right there to share around for everyone to have a taste. Other times they would put the bunch into a bag and take it back home to share later. One day, the usual gang went on their Friday walk to get some dirt. A nice coconut was temptingly beckoning from one of the trees nearby. They looked around for Vernon and actually saw him on a distant hill, walking and looking around for prospective coconut thieves. The men of the village were allowed to make vegetable gardens in the coconut field to keep the grass down, but they were not allowed to pick the coconuts. So he kept his eyes on the gardeners as well. Between the hill where Vernon was and where the dirt fetching group was, there was a short valley. It would have taking at least 15 minutes to get to any side, with the walking downhill and then uphill. So the dirt group felt safe enough to pick a bunch today. As soon as the bunch fell on the ground, not 2 minutes later, a voice was heard loudly saying, "Not a man moved." Everyone was shocked out of their skin as Vernon appeared, virtually out of nowhere, looking at them sternly. They stared at him with all kinds of scary thoughts running through their minds. After a few minutes, he started to smile. Then he laughed and said to the group, who were his neighbors after all, "I'm giving Ole a chance this time, but don't do it again, eh? Otherwise, it's jail for Ole. And I mean it, okay?" After that day, everyone looked at Vernon with fear and respect. And from then on, even on their way to collect their dirt, they never even picked up a dry coconut from the ground that fell on its own. And that's the end of the story, The Laughing Lager. Thank you very much, Velma.
Thank you, Vishnu. That reminds me of the Sukuya. Every old man is a Lagahu, every old woman is a Sukuya. Vilma?
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Vishnu. Thank you. Did a good job.
Any other comments?
I remember in my own grade, we taught the Lago, if you turn into a you'll don't give it a but the man and I told the story with
Vishnu, we're not hearing you.
I don't know what happened.
Okay. Try again, Vish.
Huh?
Try again, yes.
Did you hear the story?
Yes.
Yes, we heard the story, but we're not hearing your comments.
Okay. Are you hearing me now?
Yes.
Loud and clear.
I was saying one time, people told the lagger who had a cut to his back, to his side. And I was saying to, and I was looking for in the story where it was said that sometimes the lagger who was dragging a chain. At least in my area, that was part of it. If a man drags the chain, you see him, he's damn lagger watching. So I That's okay, not a bad story.
Yeah. What happened? I couldn't do too much details of those kinds because I wanted to keep the words to a minimum of 1,000.
Yeah.
So
I thought
one of the things that
there was that.
I thought the story. I thought the story would have been more. I thought the story would have been more. Yeah.
More scary.
More serious.
Yeah. If I extend it, it's going to be. If I extend it, yes. Yeah, I will do that. Yeah.
One of the things that stood out for me in that story is the whole the idea of going for dirt to Lipe.
Yes.
Right, and that used to be because if you want to Lipe, you have to get a special kind of sapate dirt, as they used to say.
White dirt, yeah.
And that used to be in a particular place. In my village, it used to be right near in the recreation ground, and there was a little hill. And people would go with their little cutlass or the hoe and excavate, dig a little bit and take in their buckets or whatsoever.
Yeah.
And after a while, that little hole used to get quite big. You know, usually it used to be against a hill, and they used to do this. So that that particular aspect of your story, Vilma, and that stood out for me. And I like the way that, you know, you sometimes include the culture of the days gone by because very few people lipe. I don't know if anybody lipe in your village. You're living in a little fancy village here, but in Pinal, we still have people who lipe. And sometimes, you know, they have the little kutia, which is called a little prayer room, and where they would lipe and all
I've
that.
not seen that for a long time. Mm.
And even now that when you're doing
Oh,
prayers and you have your
yeah,
baby, you do a little lipping.
definitely. You
Yeah,
have
so
to do
that, that,
yes.
that is my comment. And just for some people who don't know, you have to mix the dirt with a little bit of gobar. And for those who do not know what gobar is the cow's excrement. So you had to mix it so that it would bind, if that is the
Even
correct
I
word.
live in Pinal at the Gosine house.
Oh yes, sure. Well, I don't know if you will tell Roll, I don't know if they still own the prop. I think they sell it for Ben, but the house started to fall down now, Go sign house.
Yeah, somebody took a picture and sent it by us. Yeah. Well,
Okay, I don't know if anybody want to make any comment on this story again. Go ahead.
Remember in those days, there weren't upstairs galvanized houses. Are you hear me now? No?
No, I'm not hearing.
Yeah.
I'm not
Try
hearing.
sound only. Video.
Come in, Randy.
Hello?
Yeah.
Here, Randy, you want to comment?
No, well, I was just suggested to Mr. Tagusai, right?
I think he was just suggesting that perhaps he tries just the sound and take off the video. Let's see. Vishnu, do you want to attempt to speak now?
Yeah. I was suggesting that those days in the villages, there were mainly grass houses with dirt walls. And in order to get the ground smooth or get the walls smooth and looking pretty, they came up with the idea why dirt, go back some dirt to leap it. It did look really nice. And the Buddhist remember the little Eve like Moti?
Yes, I didn't hear exactly what you say, but
I was talking about the around the house.
oh, yes.
That
Yes,
be
to be
all
just a little right.
elevated, please. Yeah. So
Yeah. I remember that.
then
Aroni.
Okay, yes.
most houses were dirt walls, weren't board or bricks. At least in the, so we needed that dirt, that white dirt and gobar to do a good job. And
It's
people
who would have been able to find out, because that wasn't everywhere, you know. It's who would have started that white dirt thing, where they discovered it, and you know what I mean? Because it wasn't white dirt everywhere. You had to know where to go and get.
Yes. So up in Esperanza, there were little hills. I mean, as Mr. Brucing said, you go and excavate and you get a white dirt. So it looked nice for us, you know. Some people use their hand, some use a piece of cloth. Lipe. But I used to use my hand.
Yeah, my mother used to use her hand also.
All right, that's my contribution.
Okay, I just want to show a little picture. I don't know how well you've seen this one.
Yeah.
I don't know. Gosha, if you could put it out so it could be bigger.
Yeah.
This used to be a dirt house. This was Heather's neighbor's house. This was the caretaker of Heather's father's estate. And this house here is a thatch roof, a karat roof with walls, mud walls. I don't know if anybody could make it bigger, Gosha.
My house was just so.
There was
mud walls, karat roof and mud walls.
Yeah,
There
they
was
This is a
found
picture. And
the
the
beams were made
internal
from
walls were
mangrove.
also mud. I think
Mhm.
Heather could tell you a bit about this house.
What I surprised me was all those many people living in that house. You know, they were a very lovely
Yes, yeah,
family. Yeah.
Yes,
yes.
because they
I
didn't want
run
a
away
rat
one day. I
great
run away and went
granddaughter.
by them one day and I get licked.
One of Rat's great granddaughter put out a post on Facebook and she enumerate all the children's name. And I think I check about 9.
Mm, mm.
Yes, yeah. 9 people. Yeah, and
Okay, I just
mother,
wanted to,
father.
when you was talking about the house, to show this. And that particular kind of dirt is to give you a sort of yellowish color of the
Yes.
walls. Okay, so
That was
that's my
the cow dung kind of color. The cow
Yeah.
dung
I don't
contribution.
I don't remember the houses were being hot. They were cool houses.
Yes.
We had no
Yeah, very
roads.
cool.
Very
Mhm.
cool.
Very cool.
Well, the
And you
next
know, let me just say
oh,
this. Let me just
sorry,
say
go
this.
ahead.
Yeah. But the thing about the walls, okay, the beams were made from mangrove wood, right? And then in between the beams, the wood, they would kind of interweave roseau. You know what's roseau?
Yeah,
Okay.
Roseau.
yeah.
And that used to hold up that wall. And let me tell you, when an earthquake takes place, nothing happens to that house. A concrete house might fall down, but not that.
And they
Yes,
use
and
a
you also use the roseau to put the carrot on for the
Yes,
roof.
yes, yes.
but then you dig a well. You dig a well and you pour water and dirt and you
Mhm,
took the grass
mhm.
and lay pack the tapia grass to the mud and then you lay it like one over the other like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the good old days. Times are fast. All
Well, the
right.
next person to read is myself, and I'll be reading Playing in the Bushes and an Almost Good Licking one Friday afternoon. Vilma, I really enjoyed the story. It reminded me of growing up in Penal.
I hope I was not boring anybody, honestly.
Here we go. As soon as 9-year-old Gita came home from school on afternoons, she would quickly take off her marine overall and white shirt and put on some home clothes. It took her almost half an hour to get to her home in Pumpkin Trace, that was situated west of the three-quarter-mile distant La Romaine RC primary school she attended. Then she would sit down in the hammock that swung in the gallery of the carrot roof, tiny mud-walled house where she lived with her family of 7. There she would rub some coconut oil mixed with petroleum jelly under her 2 feet to soothe the skin burned from walking barefoot on the sun-heated asphalt-paved main road. After that, she would jump up and run into the tiny kitchen to see what there was to eat. Depending on what was there, maybe some sada roti and vegetable tal curry, she would look in her secret spot under a crocus bag to get a penny coin. With that, she would run back up the road by Mr. Guswa's vegetable shed and buy an armchair that he had on sale to add flavor to the boring food. The armchair could be made from mango, pumsite, or chalta. All were equally delicious. Having no school homework to do, as she was in standard 2, as soon as she was finished eating, she would run off to play with her neighborhood friends until late. There were some guava bushes in the back of Pumpkin Trace, and the entire population of children used to make that guava patch, as they called it, their playground. They used to sometimes also go down the hill at the back of the patch where there was a river some distance away. In those times, a very distantly placed water pipe stands along the main roads to get clean water. The river became a place for housewives and teenage females whose mother had to go to work to wash clothes and even bathe. One Friday afternoon, Gita met up with her friends, Shanti, Gemma, Angela, and Mona. Mona was the only child for her parents and was a bit spoiled. After they had their fill of jumping and swinging on the guava trees, she suggested they go to the river. The others, especially Gemma, who was not too ready to agree with that idea. Gemma's mother was very strict and she always had a belt ready to use if Gemma was being hardy. Gita's mother was more lenient, and even though Gita and her siblings got licks from time to time, Gita felt that this afternoon's river visit was not one to be worried about. So she said to Mona, "Yes, let me go. I want to go." She jumped around in glee and anticipation. So they went. At that seeming 5 o'clock hour, the ladies had already done their laundry and gone home. There were a few teenage boys bathing a little distance away, but the girls knew them and didn't feel afraid. The girls jumped into the shallow water with their clothes on, throwing water on each other and screaming at the coldness of it. Once or twice Geeta felt as if she heard like her mother's voice calling her, but in the midst of all the noise that her pals were making, she just ignored it. She thought to herself that it was still daylight and she still had enough time to eat her boring dinner and wash her skin before going to sleep. With the limited water storage in village homes in those days in the 60s, full bathing was not done every day as in most households. Finally, laughing and wet, the girls left the bushes and headed to their homes. Even then, on the way back, they spied a vine of tiny, ripe, wild fruits that they liked to eat, and Gemma said, "Look, Olia, Lele, let me pick some. It looking nice and ripe." So they had Lele to their heart's content, and eventually they reached Pumpkin Trace. Everyone dispersed in her house direction. Rita saw her mother standing in front of their house. She seemed to be holding something that looked like a piece of broken hibiscus branch in her hand. She was also looking very angry. "Gita," she said sternly, "you hear me calling you so long?" Gita's eyes opened wide with surprise and fear. She replied, "No, Mama, I didn't hear you." "And I calling you so long and you ain't hear me?" said Mama as she raised her arm with a branch over her head and brought it down on Gita's back. Gita started to bawl loudly. "Next time I call you, you better come home quick, eh?" she said as she tried to hit Gita another whack. But Gita quickly ran past her mother as she ducked in the second blow and ran into the house. Her father was sitting inside the house on the floor of the living room reading a book. Gita's family were not able to afford electricity, so there was no radio to play or listen to, only a scripture book or old magazines discarded by others to be read. Gita ran behind her father, hid behind his back, and remained there until her mother could only throw away the whip along with her anger. "Go and wash your skin now, Gita," her father said to her, "and come and eat your food." Her two older sisters, Budney and Gertie, were already seated on the floor eating their dinner. They watched Gita in amusement and snickered. Her brother Harry, sitting next to them, rolled his eyes as he put a piece of roti dipped in tartary sauce into his mouth. Everyone knew that Gita was not going to stop her bush jaunts any time in the near future, licks or no licks. The end. I enjoy that because that's just like growing up in Pinal. MOT?
Yes, indeed, and some things stand out to me again in that story, you know, and Vilma talk about in other stories too, cleaning your skin as opposed to full bathing.
Yes.
And I think that problem used to be because we had no water in the village. Sometimes you have one standpipe and the water coming very slowly so that you'd hardly get any water. And then we'd have to go by Heather's father house, who had a big cistern, an underground cistern, and he would give us some water, but it was quite a distance to walk. So, Heather, thank you for the water. But again, coming back to the full bathing and wash your skin. So, because full bathe would necessitate you have to go by the standpipe and come back with a bucket or two of water, a wash your skin is a little cowboy that you do so that to avoid that. So I like that. Um, Also, she talked about something about boring food. And as growing up as being for the country and you're a little poor, so most of the time you get a roti and maybe fry aloo or something because you don't want to put no tomato choka because that go leak, no curry that go leak. So it's either fry aloo or fry karaili or fry okra and karaili. But a little bit, I never like it, but as a grown man, I love karate. So in order to, to enhance this boring food, you go and buy a cent and char. So I like the way that Vilma captured these things. And she talked about Lele. Heather behind our house on the first hill had
Yeah,
two big lily tree.
yeah,
I
yeah.
don't know if people know about lily, but I don't know.
And
So I
behind
saw that
Rat House, we had a little ravine that used to fill up in water in the rainy season, and we used to go down there and play in that and get licks for that. So I really like this story. This was the best story for me to have.
To relate to.
you
Well, I
know,
was
I
Gita.
see like
I
that
was
especially
Gita.
for Heather.
Right. I said I was
Okay,
Gita. I was the one who almost got the licks.
Yeah, yeah. I would be the Gita too.
okay. Vish, you want to tell me something about your experience as it relates to Heather's story? To sorry, Vilma's last story. If you're there.
No, no, I'm okay with that there. No, I'm okay with
Oh, I
Well,
think it one thing.
Motilal is the last reader, and he will read "Working in the Fields No More."
Okay, I forget it. Let me just get my paper. So let's talk a little bit until I get that thing there. Oh my
So,
God.
Vilma, you have any books on Amazon?
No, no.
Oh, okay. No, I just wondered how to get your books because I'm so far away in Canada, and I love those stories. I
Yeah,
really
well,
like
I have to. I talked to Mr. Motilal about having these stories published, and he said he will help me.
Yes, well, that would be good.
Yes, yes.
So far, they are not published yet.
Mhm.
Okay, well, when we do our reading in the library, I will show you the quality publication that the guy did for me and Vilma. And if you want layout and a little bit of editing, Krishna is the man for you. Krishna.
Good.
Okay, so I have
I
this
hope so.
last poem
I
here
need
to
somebody
read.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, Krishna would help. I know he will. This poem is entitled Working in the Fields No More. But before I read this poem, I would like to sing two lines. These lines Wilma did not write, but it's two lines from a chutney song. So I'll sing the two lines and then I will go into Wilma's poem.
Okay.
Caroni, close down, we can't go for kid. Caroni, close down, we can't go for kid. We can't go for cane, boy, we can't go for cane. Caroni, close down, we can't go for cane. Okay, thanks for that. And now I will read Wilma's poem. I really don't know what to say. Never thought I would see the day when the sun rose and no Caroni. No, how we going to get money? My grandparents work so hard. Even my father and mother too. Oh God, what gonna happen to me now? I gonna have to change my life. But how? Those Fridays, when Pa done work at 10, meet up to a friend and them. Sit down by the rum shop until when? Oh yes, when the salary done spend. He used to bring the change and expect Ma to use it for a range of things, like sending we school and buying goods is better with the live in the woods. If they did keep Caroni for we, I would have come out just like he, drinking and cussing and threatening to beat the neighbors and them who live in the street. Every Sunday, we would have bust a line from morning till night, drop in anytime. I go be waiting for you in the yard. 2 glasses and a bottle of rum, my head bad. That and Carony was with life. Don't mind if Ramsing take away Boyo wife. Boyo get a next man on and make some children. He is a Trini to the bone. Now all that changed. And I had to look at something, maybe a book. You see, when I was young and going to school, I never quite thought of it as a tool. Well, as long as there is life, I must state, nothing is really ever too late. I could pick up my book, give it a next look, and stop being such a mook. I could really learn to read using a dictionary whenever I need to find an alternative to the word of course, which all too often I just find I just boss. I thought of taking a really bold step and buying a car with the V-step, pull some bull on the nation's road. Never mind, I don't know the highway code. But with all them accident every day, I think I better do that way. I think I better don't go that way. Let me just back and do the right thing and start all over with a bit of foresight. The end. Thank you, Vilma, for the opportunity to read your poem.
Thank you, Motilal. Very nicely done.
Thank you, Mr. Motilal. You did a good job.
Thank you for the opportunity, Vilma.
Well, Moti, I had already left Trinidad by the time Carony closed, so all you could enlighten me a little bit more about how that affected everybody. Well, Vilma, your poem really shed some light on that for me. Any other comments?
Well, it kind of remind me of Petrotrin closing down, right? Yeah. In terms of the change in lifestyle and the effect it it had, as well as a different time period. But I guess tomorrow we'll find out more about the side effects of that, right?
Willard, long time I hear you, boy. Let's say something now.
Yeah, Motilal and everybody. Yeah, Willard here. Yeah, thanks to Cynthia. I really certainly about this very interesting session, I really enjoyed it, Unfortunately, I hadn't read any books by, is it Vilma Susanka? Is that her name?
Yes, that's my name.
Hello? Are you all here?
Yes, that is my name.
So,
yeah,
right. Yes. So what I'm saying is I couldn't really comment, give a critique, so to speak, or some, how should I say, my impressions. But what I heard, I could really relate to, I mean, I'm a Trinidadian. I'm an Indo-Trinidadian, even though I grew up urbanized, but in the 60s, but I've been involved in productions, a lot of the talk about the leaping and so on. I learned through the theater, having been involved in a play called Freedom Road. I don't know who remember that play, a play written by Willie Chen. And it dealt exactly with that situation with the East Indians growing up. He wrote that play as the shop Chinese, in the Bronte estate where he grew up, and he firsthand saw the poverty and the lifestyle and culture and the alcoholism and the abuse the advantage of Indian people by the estate owners and so on. So it was a very educational thing for me, very informative. I learned a lot of the cliches, the leaping and the the terminologies now, of which were all included in that production. I also read a lot, through history and so on. So, but even the situations, the short stories, was very anecdotal, very, very funny. And everyone read so well, and thank you very much, Mr. B. Thank you. Sorry, I wasn't here from the beginning. Thanks again, Cynthia, for reminding me. And, looking forward to more work. So, congratulations to you, ma'am, on a wonderful set of short stories, and best success to everyone. And I hope you do get them published, and, I'm looking forward to it. So nice to be here. Thank you all. God bless. Thanks for letting me share.
Thank you very much too.
So Vilma,
Okay,
where
Heather, back to you.
I was just
Back to you,
wondering.
Heather.
Yes, I was just wondering where Vilma exactly where you grew up. Where would Pumpkin Trace be?
You think I should tell you?
Yeah.
Okay. It's called Murli, Murli Trace. It used to be a trace. Well, they paved it, so now it's a street. It didn't change much over 20,000 years. It's still the same.
But
It's
what
still-
what part of Trinidad? Because I'm with Motilal and Pinale in the deep south there. Are you closer to Sando?
La Romaine, you know where La Romaine is?
Oh yes, La Romaine. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So that is like south of La Romaine, where you could walk down the road and go to the Mosquito Creek. You could walk. It's a walking distance.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's how the life used to be in those days in that area. And the women and only the people used to work in the Caroni estate.
Yes.
So, it was kind of hectic. It was, what stories we could write on these things.
Yeah. So I'm a little further south than you, but yeah, I know the area, the lifestyle.
Yeah. And remember the story I wrote about the mangrove and catching the crabs and thing I had written and read that for you all?
Yes, and then we were waiting to hear part 2. So sometime.
Yeah. So that is it from me.
It's very
I thank you.
enjoyable.
Yeah, I want to thank all of you, Poetry and Prose, for giving me this opportunity to publicly expound on my writing. I am not used to this kind of public scrutiny or publicity, but very thanks to you, Mr. Motilal Budu Singh. You are the one who initiated all of this. It was a miraculous day when we met at Mood Alive last year. May God and his angels keep you all healthy, wealthy, and happy. Thank you all from my heart. And last but definitely not least, thank you to the kind people who read my work with such more feeling than me. You think that you all wrote them yourselves. You did so well. I thank you so much.
Well, Vilma, I hope you'll join us in future endeavors here on our group. We have Halloween, we have how we celebrate Diwali coming up. That might be a nice little thing for you to do a little write up on.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right.
So between now and Christmas, we have a few things coming up. So we look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you so much. I think I could try, but
yeah.
Sometimes like on Sundays, I might have something to do and something that I can't put off or avoid, and that's why, yeah.
But Gertrude will post the events coming up, so it will give us a lot of time to think about it and make arrangements. So yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anyone else has any comments on today's event?
Hi, Vilma. Just wanted to say I really enjoyed hearing your work.
Thank you.
It was quite delightful. I look forward to buying copies of your books.
Yes, I'm waiting for the book too.
ASAP.
Okay, Gusha, before you close, I just want to remind everybody that I'll be launching my book at the Daybay Library on the 21st of October, and we will also be Zooming at the same number. So I'm looking forward to see a lot of you in person, and who could join with me, who could join with us on Zoom. So,
Yes, we will
okay,
be there.
back to you, Gusha.
Growing.
We will be there, God willing.
Okay.
Lovely. And we're also featuring Vilma in our anthology. As for the update on the anthology, really quickly, our anthology made its way into my hands very early, a little after midnight today. So we've gone through the editing process, the proofreading process. You should be getting agreements from me as well as your final copy to approve. So I'm going to make it pretty easy. Only reply if you have an issue with it. If you don't
Okay.
have an issue with it, go ahead, sign the contract, and we will be all set.
Thank you.
So I look forward to that, Vilma.
Okay.
I really enjoyed the readings today. The conversation that came about was lively, and it took me back to a time I never knew.
Thank you very much.
But it was quite interesting. And I'd like to thank everyone that read. I would like to give a special thanks to Heather for chairing our meeting today. Heather, thank you. You did a wonderful job. And to everyone that attended, we appreciate you.
Yes, me too. Yes, those who are logged on, thank you so much.
My pleasure. And with that, we're going to go ahead and
Okay.
close, but don't feel free to hang up right away. We will leave the parking lot open for everyone that wants to chat.
Okay.